Okay, we'll get started. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first of two information sessions that the City of Toronto is hosting to share some information and answer questions about the Circular Food Innovators Fund. My name is Megan Davis. I'm the manager of the Circular Economy and Innovation Unit in Solid Waste Management Services at the City of Toronto. Also joining me on this call are several of my solid waste colleagues, Angela Doyle, Paige Here, Sonia Patel, Scott Cameron, and Alex Christensen. We at the city are very excited to launch this program and support some small business innovators who want to contribute to our circular economy transition by making reuse a core part of their business models. Before we get started into the presentation, I do want to begin with a brief land acknowledgement. So at the City of Toronto, we want to acknowledge that our lands are the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And we also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Recognizing that some people are maybe joining virtually from other places, I do encourage everybody to take stock and reflect about the lands that they're on, the history of those lands, and the people that live on them in the spirit of ongoing reconciliation. So to kick off the webinar, I just want to give a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded. It will be published on the Circular Food Innovators Fund webpage at toronto.ca, along with the slide deck for the presentation and a list of the questions and answers that we receive and provide. We're going to do our best to answer all of the questions that are asked during this session, but if we're unable to do so and get to everything, we will do our best to get all of those answers posted on the website afterward. All attendees, as you've probably seen, are muted. And you won't be able to unmute yourselves, but we do want to encourage you to submit your comments and questions, and please use the WebEx Q&A function to do that. Up on the screen right now is a little bit of instruction on that. There's a few different ways to access the Q&A, depending on what kind of device you're using. If you are logging on via an internet browser, the Q&A button can be found at the bottom of the video window. If you're logging on through the WebEx app, you should click the participants button at the bottom of the video, and then click the Q&A button at the bottom right. If you are on a smartphone, click the participants panel button at the top right corner of the screen, and then click Q&A at the bottom right of the screen. And finally, if you're on a tablet, please click the participants panel button at the bottom of the screen, and then click the Q&A button at the bottom right. If you are having any technical difficulties during today's session, please contact Alex Christensen. He'll help you troubleshoot through those. So Alex, if you wouldn't mind to please put your details in the chat. And again, if you're having any trouble, send Alex a quick email or give him a phone call. My colleague Sonia will be monitoring the questions that are coming in through the Q&A, and she'll pose those to the panelists at the end of the presentation. We are going to aim to deliver the presentation in about 30 minutes, which should leave us with around 20 minutes for the Q&A session. With that, I am happy to hand this over to Paige to walk everyone through the details of this new grant program.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks everyone for coming today. So yeah, today I'll be walking through the grant program. We're going to start with the fund overview, which is an overview of the key dates and the objectives of the funds. Then we're going to go over eligibility. This will include what projects are eligible, what applicants are eligible, and what expenses are eligible for funding. We will then walk through the application process, which is how to apply and what information is needed to apply. Then we're going to do a quick overview of the city's evaluation process. So after you apply, how will the city evaluate applications? And then finally, we'll go over briefly what the obligations of the fund recipients are. So if you are successfully given funding, what are your obligations, including signing the funding agreement and reporting requirements? And then, as Megan mentioned, right at the end, we'll do a question and answer period. If you have any questions, please place them in as Megan suggested. If you have any more information, you can also, if you are looking for any more information, you can find it on our website as well if it's not answered here. With that in mind, we're going to go quickly over the fund overviews, beginning with the key dates. So as you can probably tell, the first key date is the information session, which you're at right now. We'll be hosting another information session covering the same ground on February 13th, 2024. So if anyone that you know wasn't able to make this one, there's another session, or anyone you might think is interested in applying for the fund, there'll be another session for them. An important deadline for everyone is the application submission deadline. That is February 27th at 11:59 p.m. We will not be accepting applications after this deadline, so make sure to note that down. After applications close, we'll obviously be doing our internal evaluation process, and we'll be hoping to notify applicants of their success in April of 2024. After that, successful applicants will sign funding agreements and begin their projects in May 2024. At that moment, after you sign your funding agreement, if you are a not-for-profit, you will receive initial 50% of funding after that agreement is signed. 6 months after this, 6 months after your project starts, if you are responsible for submitting an interim report, and projects have to be completed in 12 months after the project starts. Final reports are due 13 months after the project starts. So it's a year to complete the projects. At the 6-month mark, you do an interim report, and then 1 month after the project ends, so 13 months after the project starts, you will hand in your final report deadline. And then after we process the final reports, the final payments will come out before December 31st, 2025. So what is the objective of the fund? The Circular Food Innovators Fund is aiming to support local small businesses, both for-profit and not-for-profit, in the delivery of projects that will make progress towards eliminating single-use and takeaway items in Toronto, and therefore achieving a more circular food system. This is phase 1 of the fund, and phase 1 will support businesses in implementing reuse systems that replace single-use and takeaway items with reusable food serviceware that is collected and redistributed for further use in a circular system. We're first going to go over what exactly a reuse system is according to the fund. A reuse system is a business model in which reusable food serviceware is provided to customers by a business for the delivery or takeaway consumption of food, and then it is collected, cleaned, and redistributed back for reuse by the business. So there's 2 elements there. The first is that you have to provide for customers from the business for delivery or takeout a reusable food serviceware, and then you collect, clean, and redistribute it for reuse. When we were talking about reusable food serviceware, this includes plates, bowls, cups, trays, glasses, straws, stirrers, condiment cups, and utensils. They have to be made of durable materials that stand up to frequent washing and reuse. For the context of this fund, a reuse system can be operated by a service provider, or it can be operated by a business selling food for delivery or takeaway consumption. In our eyes, a reuse system is not only the reusable food serviceware itself, but also the infrastructure and support technology. This infrastructure can include construction, collection bins, and cleaning facilities. And the support technology can include mobile applications to coordinate reverse logistics of reusable food serviceware or barcode tracking systems for the reusable food servicewares. The overall pot of funding is $250,000. So that's the total amount that is available. For each individual project, the city will consider funding grant requests that start at $5,000 and go up to a maximum of $35,000. As mentioned before, all funds will only be allocated for activities taking place within a term of 1 year. That is starting in 2024 and ending no later than December 31st, 2025. It's important to note that the fund is a one-time project-specific funding and must not be considered an annual source of funding. The city will not guarantee that the total amount requested by a successful applicant will be granted. And also note that if you receive funding, if you're a grant recipient, you will be required to provide receipts and/or other financial information to verify money is spent. And grant funding will only be provided for eligible costs. And we'll be going over what eligible costs are later on in this presentation. The way funding is administered is different depending on whether you are a for-profit applicant or a not-for-profit applicant. For for-profit applicants, you may be funded up to 75% of the total costs of the proposed project to a maximum grant of $35,000. Another way of putting that is applicants must demonstrate an ability to contribute at least 25% of the total project cost through a combination of either financial or in-kind contributions. For for-profit applicants, funding will be dispersed at the conclusion of the project when a final report is submitted and accepted as complete by the city. So there will be no funding provided initially. Not-for-profit applicants, on the other hand, may be funded up to 100% of the total costs of the proposed project, again to a maximum of $35,000. In this case, 50% of the total grant will be awarded at the outset of the project, with the final 50% being dispersed at the conclusion of the project when a final report is submitted and accepted as complete by the city. For eligibility, I'm going to be providing an overview of project eligibility, eligible applicants, and eligible expenses. I do encourage you to read the application guidelines that are on our fund website, and hopefully Sonia can put it in the chat for us, to read the detailed version of eligibility before you decide to apply. For this grant, proposed projects must implement a new reuse system or demonstrably enhance an existing reuse system. Eligible projects may deploy reuse systems where food or beverages are being provided for takeaway consumption. This includes food distributed by vendors at public markets or at events. Alternatively, it can be where food or beverages are provided for delivery. This also includes catering services. Projects are eligible if they deploy either market-ready solutions or solutions that are already in market. There are two types of businesses that are eligible for application. First is for-profit businesses, and this includes business-to-business and business-to-consumer models. The second group are registered charitable and non-for-profit organizations, which can also include business improvement areas and academic institutions. Applicants must either be a business that provides one of the following services I'm going to list, or be a business improvement area or academic institution that is working with a business that provides one of the following services. These services are food and beverage projects for takeaway consumption. This includes food distributed by vendors at public markets or events, or food or beverage products for delivery, which may include catering services. And the final option is reuse system infrastructure for food businesses. The city encourages collaborations between multiple organizations, as well as submissions from businesses owned by women, visible minorities, Indigenous peoples, and people with disabilities. This table here is going to go over the eligible expenses. So to read the table on the left, we have the eligible cost category. We have a description in the middle, and then there is a maximum percentage of the grant use. This refers to what the maximum percentage of the grant that can be used for this expense category. The first category is direct staff costs. This includes direct staff costs for the delivery, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of the project. For example, this can include staff salaries. This can be used for up to 50% of the total grant. The next category is purchase services. This includes direct non-staff costs for purchase services from contractors and consultants that may be providing services such as web design, translation, communications, and/or marketing campaign services for the project. This can be up to 15% of the maximum grant. The next category is fees or honoraria. These are direct non-staff costs for fees or honoraria for professional skill instructors that are directly tied to the project implementation. Again, this is up to a maximum of 15%. The next one is for any overhead costs that are directly tied to the project. This can include room, facility, and event rental fees, as well as utilities. Again, this is 15% of the maximum grant. Capital costs for renovations required are an eligible expense as long as they are part of the project. And this can be up to a maximum of 50% of the grant. The next category is marketing costs, but they have to be directly tied to promoting the project. This can include advertising and communication tools and materials, for example, websites, printing, and distribution of marketing materials. This does, however, exclude subscription services, which are a category later, further down. Marketing costs can only make up to a maximum of 15% of the grant. The next category is project material supplies. This includes product inventory, for example, reusable containers, and equipment rental purchases, for example, washing stations. And this is up to a maximum of 100% of the grant. Similarly, subscription services, which include project-specific subscription services, such as licensing an app to support use of reusable containers. This is up to a maximum of 100% of the total grant. And the final category is public transportation. This is stipends and local public transportation costs incurred by volunteers directly related to implementing the project. and this is up to a maximum of 15%. In the application guidelines, we also provide examples of ineligible expenses, and with the note that if you submit a budget with any ineligible expenses, the city will amend the budget to remove those ineligible expenses. Next up is the application process, so understanding how you can apply for the fund and what information you will need. The application form is available on the Circular Food Innovators Fund webpage, which I believe is already placed in the chat. It is in a survey format on Checkmarket. To help you look at the questions before you enter the survey, we have provided a Word document version of the application form, and this is provided as a workbook to help you plan your responses before making your official submission. However, you cannot submit the Word document version of this or submission in any other form other than the survey format. So use this document to plan your responses before entering them into the survey by the link provided. Applicants must also submit a completed application form to be eligible, and they must confirm that all information provided in the application form and related attachments is true, correct, and complete, as verified by an authorized official of the organization. Any incomplete applications will be disqualified. Applicants can only submit one application per funding round. If more than one application is submitted by the same applicant, for example, 2 or more project proposals, only the application that was submitted first will be reviewed. And just a reminder that the deadline is at February 27th at 11:59 p.m. What information you will need to apply? Applications will require the contact information for the applicants and organizations applying for funding. You will need a description of the proposed project, including a project plan. We have provided a project plan template that you must fill out, and then you will upload it while you are filling out the survey. These can be found on our website, and I believe Sonia is putting a link in the chat. You also need information about the impact your project will make and how your project will be funded. This will include a project budget. Again, we have provided a template that you must use for your project budget, which you will upload as part of the application process. You also need documentation to confirm the legal name of your organization, copies of any permits required, and then declaration that your organization is eligible for funding. Now I'm going to be going over how the city will be evaluating your applications after the application period is closed. After it's closed, all applications and supporting documentation will be reviewed to ensure that they meet the eligibility criteria of the fund. This will be done in the form of a technical review to ensure that the eligibility criteria is met. After that is done, it will go to a City of Toronto Fund Review Committee. This Fund Review Committee will be comprised of city staff from a variety of divisions that have different expertise with regards to circular economy, the food system, local economic development, and other relevant subject areas. Then we will come to a final decision. This final decision will depend on the project's alignments with the City of Toronto's strategic priorities, the applicant's score based on the assessment criteria, and overall demand for funds in the program, among other considerations. The decision to fund the funding decisions are final and they are not subject to appeal. I will note that we do have predetermined criteria for the Fund Review Committee to evaluate projects on. These evaluation criteria are broken down into 4 categories: how program alignment, project impact, financial feasibility, organizational capacity. We have more in-depth breakdown of what this looks like in our application guidelines, but it includes criteria such as if the budget is appropriate based on the project, if there is a clear project plan that is realistic to implement in a 1-year timeframe, if the project has a high likelihood of generating significant reduction in single-use and takeaway items, and if the applicant has strong organizational capacity to plan and deliver their project. To look at the full list, please consult the application guidelines. If you are a successful fund recipient, there are a few obligations that you must take on as part of your project implementation. The first of which is that grant recipients will be required to enter into a funding agreement with the City of Toronto. This funding agreement sets out the applicable terms and conditions that will govern use of the funds and establish requirements and expectations of the grant recipients. The terms of the funding agreement are non-negotiable. We've recently posted the template funding agreement publicly available on our webpage, and I believe Sonia just placed it into the chat. Recipients must acknowledge the financial assistance provided by the City of Toronto in any and all public communications about the specific program. If you read through the funding agreement on our website and you have any questions, please ask City staff prior to the application closing period at circulareconomy@toronto.ca. Once you have received funding, you will be required to provide receipts and other financial information to verify money spent. This will be done during the reporting process. As a reminder, funding can only be used for eligible costs. Recipients have to keep all of their financial records, including receipts and invoices, as well as any non-financial documents related to the fund or the projects for 7 years after the project ends in the case of an audit. As I've hinted at before, funding organizations are required to submit both an interim and a final report to the city to receive the balance of funds. These reports are used to document interim progress as well as final progress that the recipient has made on their project with the funds provided. This will also include questions around lessons learned. Where possible, these lessons learned will be shared with relevant stakeholders, which could include other grant recipients. We will also be requiring recipients to report on specific metrics. You can look at these metrics as well as the questions that will be asked on the standardized reporting templates at the link Sonia just placed into the chat. So both the interim and final reports are available for you to look ahead before you apply. In addition, if required, the city may interview funded organizations to support information and data collection. To maintain transparency and accountability, the city will also publicly disclose the names of organizations that received funds, along with the recipient ward and the amount that they were funded for. If it is applicable, site visits will be scheduled with each of the fund recipients shortly after the interim reports are reviewed by the city. Site visits are an opportunity for fund recipients to showcase their solution as well as demonstrate any progress made. At these site visits, as well as throughout the funding term, the city may take photos or videos of the funded projects. Recipients will also be asked to provide photos or video documentation of their project activities. In order for the city to be able to use any of these photographs or videos, careful attention is paid to concerns of copyright and consent. To address this, recipients will be required to complete the city's multimedia consent form. This consent form will be provided to funded recipients as a part of the funding agreement. There are a few situations in which the City of Toronto may request the return of funding. These can include that if the project is not complete within the allowable time frame, if funds were not used for the stated purpose of the approved project, if funds were not used for the eligible expenses outlined earlier in this presentation, or if an organization fails to submit their interim or final report. In those cases, the city may request that the funding is returned. That provides us the brief overview of the fund. For more information, you can consult our website as well as look over the application guidelines. I want to thank you all for coming. Implementing innovative and zero waste business models is an important part of building a more circular food system, and we're glad to see excitement from different businesses and organizations. We're also thankful for your interest, and we look forward to receiving any ideas you may have to push Toronto's circular economy transformation forward.